Greetings superior beings, greetings supreme being, welcome to Universal Peace Television. This is the broadcast Nuclear Deal in Danger, ? World War III, ? 3 new MSM articles, Israeli Intel Minister, Suspend, Amend or Annul. That's a HAARP article. I switch back to basic and then we can read these articles. One is New York Times, one is HAARP. I have to close my live dashboard. One is theintercept.com, how Donald Trump is trying to blow up the Iran nuclear deal. One is New York Times, a devious threat to a nuclear deal. And that's September 7th. And this is September 11, which is today. Now it's 12 already in the Netherlands. And this is the HAARP article. Perhaps it's best if we start with that. So to prevent a world war, to prevent mutually assured destruction and a severe nuclear winter, I think it's wise to first have an agreement with President Putin about bombing possible nuclear facilities in Iran where they don't allow the inspections. Probably they've just planned more sanctions against Iran, and the idea is also, shouldn't Israel be sanctioned if they have nuclear weapons as well? These nuclear submarines supplied to them by the Germans, and they have missile shields, so Iran cannot pose any threat to Israel. Is this correct? They have the Iron Dome missile shield and other missile shields, so... And a picture of the Tesla plasma shield is covered in my previous broadcasts. So let's begin reading the article.
Netanyahu must demand Trump suspend, amend or annul Iran nuclear deal, Israeli Intel Minister says. Yisrael Katz calls Iran the new North Korea and urges Netanyahu to push Trump to reconsider nuclear agreement when the two meet on sidelines of UN in 10 days. Barak Ravid, September 11, 2017, 5:47 p.m. Read more, http://webcam. Intelligence Affairs Minister Yisrael Katz, speaking at the Israel Conference on Peace, June 2017, Olivier Fidesi, Trump's UN envoy, Iran deal designed to be too big to fail. Analysis: Trump and Putin are the real targets of Israel's alleged strike in Syria. Analysis: Russia's moves on Hezbollah in Syria expose how Trump's Mideast policy endangers Israel. Read more, http://webcake.googleusercontent.com/search. Q equals cash DMX08-4JW. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should focus on trying to get U.S. President Donald Trump to suspend, amend or annul the nuclear agreement with Iran when the pair meet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York in 10 days, Israel's Intelligence Affairs Minister said on Monday. Speaking at a counter-terrorism event in Herzliya, Minister Yisrael Katz, Likud, made the comments amid debate within the Trump administration about the future of the agreement with Iran.
Well, I'm thinking it may not be necessary. I've covered the New York Times article that covered that they just need to supply a list of suspect sites before they can do the inspection, so it may be a form of miscommunication, or the new administration didn't know that. And but let's read the rest of the article if that's true.
The U.S. President is scheduled to tell Congress on October 15 whether Iran is still in compliance with the nuclear deal or in violation of it. A presidential statement that Iran is in violation of the accord could pave the way for reinstatement of sanctions by the United States, and for its withdrawal from the agreement, which was co-signed with China, Russia, the United Kingdom, France and Germany. The first mission of the Israeli Prime Minister during his upcoming visit to the United States is to demand that the U.S. president suspend, amend or annul the nuclear agreement with Iran, said Katz. Iran is the new North Korea. Action should be taken against it now, lest we regret tomorrow what we did not do yesterday. Citing the Korean crisis, Katz noted that the problems from the perspective of America's allies South Korea and Japan, and the unresolvable dilemmas that have arisen, show that Iran has to be forced to sign a new agreement, which will prevent it from achieving nuclear arms forever, as President Trump promised. Katz said, "Keep updated, sign up to our newsletter email." The new agreement should also cover the areas of missiles and Iran as a supporter of terrorism, Katz added. Netanyahu has spoken with the U.S. president several times since his election last November, both publicly and in closed sessions, in attempts to persuade Trump to reconsider the nuclear agreement. In July, when Trump first had to report to Congress on whether Iran was upholding the agreement, Netanyahu was disappointed that the U.S. president was persuaded by officials not to break the accord. U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu deliver remarks before a dinner at Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem, May 22, 2017, U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meeting in Jerusalem, May 22, 2017. They are set to meet again in New York on September 19, Pool, Reuters. However, this time Netanyahu's associates believe there is a possibility Trump will announce that Iran is violating the agreement. In his speech on Monday, Katz also called on Netanyahu to tell Trump that his administration must become more involved in discussions over Syria's future after the civil war, and not leave matters to Russia alone. The U.S. administration must play an effective role in safeguarding Israel's national security interests in the arrangements and realities taking shape in the arena, and not leave the playing field to Iran and its proxies, said Katz. The U.S. government must understand that the campaign to contain Iran in the region must also be conducted in Syria. Katz added that Syria and Iran are currently discussing a long-term agreement that would strengthen Tehran's presence in the country and allow the Iranians to maintain military bases in Syria, like the Russian army does, said Katz. The Iranians are liable to advance missiles of various kinds to Syria, and in Syria there may be a large and well-equipped force of Shiite militias whose purpose is to threaten and fight Israel, Katz declared. Hezbollah will train and command Shiite militias, deploy outposts not far from the border with Israel on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, and will continue to grow and increase the precision of its missile arsenal, he added. Barak Ravid, Haaretz correspondent, send me email alerts for new articles by Barak Ravid. You might also like, God hates fags church member left after she became friends with Jewish blogger. Now her story will be a movie. Haaretz, life. God hates fags church member left after she became friends.
God is not dead either, and religion is an abomination. So don't believe all the BS in the voice of God. Weapon is not almighty just yet. Though one day the neural network may be able to resurrect people, and it may be able to do the right thing when it is practically all-knowing and almighty, and the neural network keeps on learning from its mistakes. But to the other New York Times article that is August 31st, 2017, we read, so far, according to the IAEA and American officials, the United States has not delivered a list of suspect locations. We can read this as an excerpt from the New York Times article. Okay.
Contradicting Trump, UN. Monitor says Iran complies with nuclear deal. NewYorkTimes.com August 31, 2017. The world's nuclear inspectors complicated President Trump's effort to find Iran in violation of the 2-year-old nuclear accord with the United States and 5 other world powers, declaring on Thursday that the latest inspections found no evidence that the country is breaching the agreement. Reports of the International Atomic Energy Agency make it harder to create an argument that Iran is in violation. Britain, China, France, Germany and Russia, which also are parties to the agreement, have all expressed strong support for it and have warned that if Mr. Trump withdraws, the United States would be isolated on the issue. So far, according to the IAEA and American officials, the United States has not delivered a list of suspect locations. There are 2 grammatical errors in the New York Times article: shouldn't according the IAEA, be according to the IAEA, and it not necessary for the IAEA, it's not necessary for the IAEA. If the people would know what the people that advocate global government want to do to them, they'd be anti-global government as well. Join our anti-global government movement. Skype me, Prologic 999, to be in my broadcast. Not many viewers yet. Or do something anti-global government yourself. Organize a protest, unite with people online, have a tea session, whatever. I am a conspiracy factist, not CIA or controlled opposition. Our movement is millions strong. Some people will never allow a global government, and they know the dangers centralization brings.
So then I'm on to another important message before we read the other articles.
To prevent World War III and create universal peace, 1. Leaders are advised to avoid attacking any countries, especially innocent civilians, and declare a ceasefire when possible. 2. Promote or mention universal peace. 3. Make weed tea, eat weed or smoke a peace pipe if absolutely necessary. 4. Be prepared, radiological water filter, storable food, just in caves. Solving Iran situation. To prevent a world war over Iran, Iranian leaders are advised to allow inspections in all of their facilities as agreed upon in the nuclear agreement. American leaders are advised to avoid any type of attack on Iran to avoid a world war with its ally Russia. American leaders are advised to first have an agreement with leaders of ally countries of Iran before even thinking about bombing the facilities that do not allow inspections to avoid the Third Jesuit World War, mutually assured destruction, and a 7-year nuclear winter which would be colder than the next ice age. Iran cannot pose any threat to Israel with its Iron Dome and other missile shields. Israel has nuclear weapons which it may use to retaliate. Keep missile shields ready. Solving North Korea situation. To prevent a world war over North Korea, the North Korean leaders are advised not to attack any country, especially not the super peaceful Guam. American and other leaders are advised not to attack them if North Korean leaders would decide to attack Guam or any other nation, which would only kill innocent civilians, which some leaders may actually be trying to achieve, extermination of its own citizens to depopulate Earth, but to keep their missile shields ready so any nuclear attack can be warded off and the innocent civilians and elite are saved, and a perfect society in which we all will live happily eternally is created. This is far wiser than obliterating ourselves, the human race. We are not overpopulated in reality, so don't believe the hype. Get rid of the people responsible for the World War, possibly the leader of the Jesuits, Adolfo Nicolas, instead of the innocent civilians they want you to kill. take over, end the war, create the non-fictional utopian society ASAP to speed up finding ways to control the 7 factors that control aging during our lifetimes. They are always the ones to tell you who your enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight and to die. From the song Life's in the Balance, this would be the 3rd Jesuit World War. Watch out. Nepiophilia, also called infantophilia, is a subtype of pedophilia. It is used to refer to a sexual preference for infants and toddlers, ages 0 to 3, or those under age 5. Pedophilia is used for individuals with a primary or exclusive sexual interest in prepubescent children aged 13 or younger. Hebephilia is defined as individuals with a primary or exclusive sexual interest in 11 to 14-year-old pubescents. Epiphilia is the primary or exclusive adult sexual interest in mid to late adolescents, generally ages 15 to 19. Mesophilia, derived from the Greek mesos, intermediate, is a sexual preference for middle-aged adults. Teleophilia, from Greek teleos, full-grown, is a sexual preference for adults. Gerontophilia is a sexual preference for the elderly. Dr. Death sounds sensible to me. NewYorkTimes.com. A devious threat to a nuclear deal. By the editorial board Sept. 7, 2017. Nikki Haley laid the Trump administration's cards on the table this week with a new proposal aimed at sabotaging one of the Obama administration's most important diplomatic initiatives, the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. President Trump promised during his campaign to kill the deal. Despite its clear benefits to American security, Ms. Haley, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, has set forth a scheme that could not only allow Mr. Trump to carry out his threat, but also shift final responsibility to Congress. The whole idea makes no sense to anyone but Mr. Trump's hardline advisors, who see Iran as the root of evil in the Persian Gulf.
So the idea is they'd better use recyclable paper and cardboard.
Instead of making sure the agreement works, the president would give Iran an excuse to revive what had been a rapidly advancing nuclear capability and confront the world with another intractable nuclear challenge in addition to North Korea.
So I think it's kind of weird, and it's better to be prepared with a radiological water filter and storable food, that is rice, peanut butter and peas. To use colloidal silver, an air cleaner with an ionizer, or just an ionizer, cheap ionizer from eBay. You can get a colloidal silver generator on eBay, and probioticum. You need to replace the good bacteria in your gut if you want to immunize yourself with colloidal silver against their designer viruses and their killer vaccines, which can be injected at gunpoint. That's their plan, depopulating to 500 million one way or another. And of course, Rothschild investing in the cancer oil in South America, selling US assets, is an indication to many people that they're going to do something that will bring the cancer oil prices up in the Middle East, and it might be sanctions or something even worse. So it's best to prepare with the radiological water filter storable food. And you could also argue a gas mask with an NBC filter, nuclear, biological, chemical, for possible ISIS chemical attacks, etc. Some iodine pills, and whatever you think should be in a nice prepper bag, which is a good investment to be able to leave your home if you have to, if military are invading, etc., to survive. Your life is the most important thing, survival is all. And single ladies are welcome for this free shiatsu hand massage, of course.
The deal, negotiated with Tehran by the United States and other major powers, imposed strict limits on Iran's nuclear activities for 10 years in return for a lifting of international and American sanctions. As an added check, Congress requires the administration to certify every 90 days that Iran is abiding by the deal, in order to continue qualifying for relief from American sanctions. The administration has twice reluctantly certified Iran's compliance and is required to revisit the issue again next month. Ms. Haley said she doesn't know what Mr. Trump's decision will be. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which put unprecedented strong procedures in place for monitoring Iran's activities, has repeatedly judged that Iran is fulfilling its obligations. In July, Gen. Paul Salva of the Air Force, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told Congress that based on evidence submitted to intelligence agencies, it appears that Iran is in compliance. Mr. Trump, however, has reportedly kept pushing his advisors to find a way out, and Ms. Haley appears to have answered the call. The essence of her case, presented Tuesday to the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, is that technical compliance with the nuclear-related commitments is not sufficient and that the president has grounds to declare that Iran is not fulfilling the agreement because of other destabilizing or objectionable behavior, like its ballistic missile tests, support for Hezbollah and hostility toward the United States. We must consider the whole jigsaw puzzle, she said, not just one of its pieces. She's wrong. While Iran indeed is engaging in some very worrisome pursuits, the deal is confined to the nuclear program. As long as Tehran is staying within those limits, Mr. Trump has no reason not to certify compliance. The United States and its partners need to find other ways, including sanctions already in place and dialogue, to mitigate Iran's other behavior. In the national interest, Washington has often held its nose and dealt with aggressive or unsavory governments, among them the Soviet Union, Russia, Pakistan and Egypt. Continue reading the main story. Recent comments. A. Stanton, September 8, 2017. Question: what is the name of the only country that has been repeatedly threatened with nuclear devastation by Iran? Hint: it is the same. Sharon, 5101, September 8, 2017. Treaties are totally meaningless scraps of paper. The only thing treaties accomplish is that they're a mechanism for buying more time in. Mason, September 8, 2017. Trump is a very real threat to our very real lives. Seal comments. Ms. Haley misleads further when she argues that it would not constitute an American withdrawal from the deal if Mr. Trump didn't certify Iranian compliance. That kind of spin will convince no one, and it won't protect Mr. Trump for being blamed for whatever follows, including outrage from France, Britain, Germany, Russia and China, which are also parties to the agreement. Ms. Haley's scheme would also allow Mr. Trump to punt the deal's fate to Congress, further distancing himself from responsibility. Under American law, failure to issue the certification would open the door for Congress to reimpose sanctions on Iran. Would it be so irresponsible? Congress overwhelmingly opposed the deal when it was negotiated, but many critics now see its value. In any case, lawmakers must demand concrete evidence of Iranian non-compliance, if there is any, before reimposing sanctions. If Mr. Trump blows up the nuclear deal, then what? None of the original opponents of the deal, in or out of Congress, including Mr. Trump, have offered any plausible alternative for restraining Iran's nuclear ambitions. Without such an alternative, a reckless decision to honor a reckless campaign promise invites Iran to pursue an unfettered path to a bomb. And if deals with the United States cannot be trusted, North Korea will have one more reason to keep pursuing its nuclear program.
So they have to produce a list of suspect sites. And of course, former President Medvedev made clear attack on Iran will endanger the entire world, not would or could, but will. So that's why it's vital to first have an agreement with President Putin about this before bombing their nuclear facilities without killing any civilians, if that's the plan. But if they are out to create a world war rather than prevent one, then, which I doubt, I doubt if they want to destroy the infrastructure. I thought they wanted to heal the infrastructure.
TheIntercept.com.
Well, let's hope this intercepts it all.
How Donald Trump is trying to blow up the Iran nuclear deal. Murtaza Hussain, September 10, 2017, 3:06 p.m. In a speech last week at the American Enterprise Institute, a neoconservative think tank in Washington, U.S., Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley said President Donald Trump has grounds to decertify the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, if he so chooses. In a speech laying out the Trump administration's objections to the agreement, Haley said that the Islamic Republic of Iran had been born in an act of international law-breaking, and suggested the very nature of the Iranian government itself made any deal undesirable. Haley added, "It is unwillingness to challenge Iranian behavior, for fear of damaging the nuclear agreement, that gets to the heart of the threat the deal poses to our national security." The timing of Haley's remarks is significant. Next month, Trump must decide whether to recertify to Congress that the Iranians are complying with the terms of the deal, as per a law passed by Congress that requires the president to affirm compliance every 90 days. Trump has already signaled his own desire to kill the deal, saying last month, "I think they'll be non-compliant." Despite Trump's statements, a report last week by the International Atomic Energy Agency declared that Iran actually has been adhering to the 2015 agreement. European Union countries have also indicated their continued support for the deal, stating publicly that Iran has been abiding by its commitments. If Trump nonetheless goes against the expert consensus and the views of American allies to declare Iran as non-compliant, it would open the door for an eager Congress to reimpose economic sanctions that likely mean the unraveling of the deal. Experts on U.S.-Iran relations and nuclear non-proliferation say that a unilateral American attempt to destroy the deal would be a potential disaster. Not only would it undermine long-held U.S. interests in preventing non-proliferation, it would also open the door to a major conflict with Iran that President Barack Obama had been credited with averting. This deal works. It has rolled back and frozen Iran's nuclear program, and it is going to last for at least 15 years and even longer if we negotiate a follow-on agreement, said Joe Cirincione, president of the Plowshares Fund, a non-proliferation group that supported efforts to negotiate the agreement. There is no compelling national security rationale for pulling out of this agreement. Even the Saudis and Israeli military and intelligence officials are saying that we should keep it. It's only blind ideology behind the push to end it. Like Trump's recent move to kill the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, the final decision on the Iran deal may become the prerogative of Congress, which has historically taken a hardline position on U.S.-Iran relations. If the president declares Iran non-compliant, Congress could choose to reimpose nuclear-related sanctions, or could decide to impose new sanctions for non-nuclear-related activity as a means of punishing alleged Iranian intransigence. Either course of action would be likely to trigger a response by the Iranians, whose main incentive for making the deal was the potential for reintegration into the global economy. There is a rather deceptive argument being made by those asking Trump not to certify Iranian compliance. They are trying to deny Iran the benefits of trade and commerce that were offered during the deal, but don't want to take responsibility for pulling out of the nuclear deal itself, said Daryl Kimball, executive director of the Washington-based Arms Control Association. Failure to certify Iranian compliance opens the door to those in Congress, who, for political reasons or because they have donors pushing them to do so, would like to reimpose nuclear-related sanctions on Iran. Bush-Hair, Iran, August 21. This handout image supplied by the IPA, Iran International Photo Agency, shows a view of the reactor building at the Russian-built Bush-Hair nuclear power plant as the first fuel is loaded, on August 21, 2010 in Bush-Hair, southern Iran. The Russian-built and operated nuclear power station has taken 35 years to build due to a series of sanctions imposed by the United Nations. The move has satisfied international concerns that Iran were intending to produce a nuclear weapon, but the facility's uranium fuel will fall well below the enrichment level needed for weapons-grade uranium. The plant is likely to begin electricity production in a month. Photo by IPA via Getty Images. A view of the reactor building at the Russian-built Bush-Hair nuclear power plant as the first fuel is loaded, on August 21, 2010 in Bush-Hair, southern Iran. Photo, IPA, Getty Images. An attempt to blow up the nuclear accord without clear evidence of Iranian violations could potentially break apart the coalition of countries that helped impose the sanctions that led to the deal in the first place. Many of these players came together as the P5+1, which includes China, France, Germany, Russia, the United Kingdom and the United States, to negotiate the agreement. The United Front was in and of itself an achievement of U.S. diplomats who sought to isolate Iran over its nuclear program. If the U.S. is perceived as acting in bad faith to destroy the agreement, winning back support from the other P5+1 countries to reimpose extraterritorial sanctions, U.S. sanctions on other countries for doing business with Iran, would be unlikely. In addition to the EU, both Russia and China continue to express support for the deal, with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently stating, "It's a pity that such a successful treaty is now somewhat being cast into doubt." Backtracking on the deal for purely political reasons would also send other messages to the international community. Other countries might find that the U.S. is institutionally incapable of implementing difficult diplomatic agreements, at precisely a time when its relationships with allies have already become strained. Such a perception would also make it harder to conduct sensitive diplomacy in other crisis areas, including in the ongoing standoff with North Korea. It would be a mess in terms of diplomatic relations if the deal was terminated, said John Terman, executive director at the MIT Center for International Studies and an expert on U.S.-Iran relations. There is so much that could possibly happen, including major reputational costs for the United States or economic costs globally if trade with Iran is disrupted or banned. In addition to how it would affect the United States and aggravate its relations with its allies and with Iran, there is also the question of how attacking the deal might affect the internal politics of Iran itself. Since many sanctions were lifted, some Western companies have begun investing in Iran again, including major deals signed with French companies like Renault and Total, as well as the U.S. aircraft manufacturer Boeing. Although the resumption of investment in Iran has been slow, with investors remaining wary of political instability, Such deals have partly delivered on promises made by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to reintegrate Iran into the global economy, though public dissatisfaction with the pace of economic recovery remains high. Securing an agreement was a significant accomplishment for Rouhani, who was elected with a mandate to help diffuse tensions with the U.S. Reached for comment, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said that, in the event of the United States reneging on the deal, Iran would choose the most appropriate option that preserves our rights and promotes our national interests. Farideh Farhi, an expert on Iranian politics at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, said that even if the Trump administration tries to terminate the deal, Iran is likely to respond in a measured way. If the U.S. attempts to pull out of the agreement unilaterally, Iran will focus on exploiting the gap between the U.S. and other countries, like the EU, Russia, and China, that continue to express support for the deal. The Iranians understand American politics quite well and recognize that Mr. Trump is trying to undo all of Obama's achievements, without much thinking about the long-term consequences of these decisions, Farhi said. They understand this situation and are unlikely to react in an over-aggressive manner to everything that goes on in the United States. If the United States does pull out at this particular moment, it will be isolating itself from its own partners rather than isolating Iran, because of the political dynamic that was unleashed as a result of negotiations. Trump is trying to undo all of Obama's achievements, without much thinking about the long-term consequences of these decisions. In Haley's speech, she identified a long list of grievances that the U.S. had with Iran, some of which predated the nuclear deal by decades, and few of which were related to the strictures of the deal itself.
Well, the idea is that President Trump is not just trying to undo all of Obama's achievements, but also coming up with better solutions, basically. And I've been kind of missing auditing the Fed. I don't know if they're still going to do that. And there are also promises about Syria and Afghanistan or whatever. So I guess the president is for whatever creates universal peace and not some world war in which we all die of these scalar weapons which have made nuclear weapons obsolete. Only people with a Tesla plasma shield would survive. And some say that if World War III breaks out, then World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Many opponents of negotiations with Iran have likewise highlighted alleged Iranian malfeasance on other issues as a reason to undermine the nuclear deal, despite the fact that Iran continues to adhere to the negotiated terms. In this attempt to expand the debate over the deal, many see a deliberate strategy to destroy the agreement by retroactively moving the goalposts. These critics pretend the deal was supposed to be something more than what it was intended to be, an agreement to restrict Iran's nuclear program in exchange for economic benefits. The practice of arms control has always been divorced from analysis of other types of behavior of states, said Terman. Looking back at previous agreements during the Cold War, general Soviet misbehavior or American misbehavior was never included in the enormously complex negotiations made to control nuclear weapons, because you would simply never get anywhere while trying to do that. Haley's speech highlighted U.S. objections to Iranian policies in Syria, historical acts of terrorism conducted by Iranian-aligned groups like Hezbollah, and domestic human rights in Iran as reasons for attacking on the nuclear deal. But expanding the agreement to focus on issues that go well beyond nuclear non-proliferation would paradoxically make a conflict more likely, by making it impossible for the U.S. and Iran to sustain even limited agreements to defuse crises like the nuclear issue. Any attempt to include other factors like Iranian policy in Syria or domestic human rights in the discussion is a strategy to destroy the arms deal that is on the table, Terman said. When the neocons start talking like that, you know that its a strategy is to destroy the diplomatic efforts to stop nuclear proliferation. Top photo. In this photo released by the semi-official Iranian Students News Agency, ISNA, a long-range S-200 missile is fired in a military drill in the port city of Bushehr, on the northern coast of Persian Gulf, Iran, Wednesday, December 29, 2016. We depend on the support of readers like you to help keep our non-profit newsroom strong and independent. Join us.
Okay, those were the articles. The case against the Iranian nuclear deal is one big lie. Foreign policy blog 1 hour ago. UN nuclear watchdog defends Iran deal. Okay, weird. Sometimes when I right click on something, then it's like it's opening it or whatever. But this is even weirder. Hurricane Irma, possibly man-made, spared one Florida coast and slammed into another. Washington Post 1 hour ago. Frost joins lawsuit against Dhaka rollback. Washington Post. Supreme Court allows broad enforcement of travel ban, at least for a day. Trump asks Supreme Court to lift restrictions on refugees in travel ban. Pope Francis wants President Trump to expand his definition of quote pro-life unquote to include protecting DACA recipients. Weird that his other eye also looks kind of black. So he had an accident with the Popemobile, but what I found weird was that the Popemobile only protects the front and the back basically, and on the sides it was open. And that's the side from whence a bullet would be fired and stuff. Not from the front or the back. The road is usually cleared. Anyway,
Medvedev, attack on Iran will endanger entire world. Source, Al-Man'ar TV, September 14, 2008.
The original article appeared in Haaretz.
Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said, "We know that certain players are planning an attack against Iran, but we oppose any unilateral step and military solution to the nuclear crisis," he added. Speaking at the Valdai Discussion Club, an annual forum of opinion makers in Moscow, Medvedev also said, "The world does not need to tighten its sanctions on Iran at this time." The discussions at Valdai dealt with Russia's international role. In response to a question from Haaretz as to whether the Middle East conference Russia is planning to host in the fall shows involvement similar to that once displayed by the Soviet Union, Medvedev said that Russia is not the heir to the Soviet Union. Russia has a completely different value system. When it proposes a mediation service, its sole intention is to assist in bringing about a peace that both Jews and Arabs will enjoy. A day before the discussion with Medvedev, the forum's members met with Russia's former president and incumbent prime minister, Vladimir Putin. He said he considers Russia's presence in the Middle East important and that his country intended to use Syrian ports as it did in the past, but not for defined purposes. ForeignPolicy.com. Voice: the case against the Iranian nuclear deal is one big lie. There's no reason to trust any of the Trump administration's criticisms of, or plans for replacing, the JCPOA. Imagine we were back in 1948. Suppose Joseph Stalin offered to halt the Soviet Union's efforts to develop its own atomic bomb for up to 15 years. As part of the deal, suppose he agreed to let inspectors from the United Nations enter the USSR and monitor all of its nuclear facilities. Suppose he'd even said these UN officials could also inspect other Soviet facilities, provided they had valid reasons to suspect prescribed activities were occurring there. To sweeten the offer even more, imagine Stalin said he would also give up a substantial portion of the enriched uranium the USSR had already accumulated, leaving it well short of the amount needed to make a bomb. What did he want in exchange? just some economic concessions to help rebuild the war-ravaged Soviet economy. In making this offer, suppose Stalin insisted on retaining the capacity to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes, such as power reactors or medical uses. And let's also suppose he made it clear he wasn't going to withdraw the Red Army from Eastern Europe or stop trying to spread communism in other parts of the world. The Cold War would go on, in short, but the Soviet Union would not be a nuclear weapons state for as long as the agreement remained in force. It is hard to believe the paranoid Soviet dictator would ever make such an offer, of course, but if he had, do you think Harry Truman, George C. Marshall, and Dean Acheson would have embraced it? You bet they would. And had that deal been in place in 1953, Dwight D. Eisenhower and John Foster Dulles would have moved heaven and earth to keep it in force. The reason is obvious: this deal would have kept the USSR from getting atomic weapons until the early 1960s, at least, and made it far less likely that Moscow would surprise us with a sudden demonstration test, as it did in 1949. At a minimum, this arrangement would have extended the warning time surrounding any future Soviet effort to break out and race to the bomb. To be sure, the counterfactual scenario sketched above is almost unimaginable. Nonetheless, it reminds us how bizarre, short-sighted, and unrealistic the renewed campaign against the Iran nuclear deal is, for in fact, Iran agreed to essentially the same terms I sketched above, thereby removing the possibility of becoming an active nuclear weapons state for at least 15 years. Yet even though this deal is very much to America's advantage, and to the benefit our main regional allies, the same critics continue to snipe at it. The latest round in their campaign was UN Ambassador Nikki Haley's disingenuous and falsehood-filled speech at the American Enterprise Institute last week. The speech is useful in one sense: it provides a handy summary of just about every creative and mendacious argument that die-hard opponents of the JCPOA have been cooking up since the agreement was signed. Unfortunately, it is neither an accurate guide to the agreement, to its current status, nor more importantly, to U.S. interests. Among other things, Haley claimed, falsely, that the deal gave Iran what it wanted up front, in exchange for temporary promises to deliver what we want. The truth is about 180 degrees from this claim. Iran gave up enriched uranium, destroyed 13,000 centrifuges, dismantled the Arak reactor, let the UN install monitoring devices, implemented the NPT additional protocol, and a host of other measures, all before the United States or anyone else began lifting sanctions. She also claimed Iran was guilty of multiple violations, belied by the fact that the U.S. government and the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, have repeatedly certified Iran was in compliance. Iran did exceed the negotiated 130-ton limit on heavy water twice, by less than ton each time, and quickly rectified the matter when this was pointed out. She repeated the usual neoconservative talking points about Iran's destabilizing regional activities, which were never part of the agreement and in fact are reason to be glad the agreement prevents Iran from getting the bomb, and raises the bogeyman of supposed undeclared sites that the IAEA hasn't looked at yet. In her twisted logic, there's no way to know if Iran is complying until we've inspected every laboratory, military base, mosque, hotel room, maternity ward, and goatherder's shack in the entire country. In her twisted logic, there's no way to know if Iran is complying until we've inspected every laboratory, military base, mosque, hotel room, maternity ward, and goatherder's shack in the entire country. It is easier to make up false charges than to get at the truth, which makes fact-checking the deal's critics an endless and exhausting enterprise. For additional debunkings of Haley's speech, see Paul Pillar here, Emma Ashford's podcast here, and the Diplomacy Works website here. When facts and logic fail them, opponents of the JCPOA resurrect the myth of a better deal. Having failed to stop Obama's original negotiation, they now claim decertifying the deal is the first step to persuading Iran and the other members of JCPOA to agree to major revisions or new restrictions. As I've written before, this is a vain, even laughable, hope. Contrary to unreliable sources like Bloomberg reporter Eli Lake, the other signatories remain strongly committed to the agreement and want it to remain intact, even if they would also like Iran to modify some of its other behavior in other ways. More importantly, this view incorrectly assumes the United States has unlimited leverage over Iran, and that getting tough now will magically produce a better deal. That take it or leave it approach was tried from 2000 to 2012, however, while Iran went from having 0 centrifuges to more than 12,000. It was only when the United States showed a willingness to accommodate some of Iran's red lines that it actually got them to reverse course. That same logic remains true today. Details aside, the central realities of the deal remain clear and stark, and no amount of dubious lawyering can alter them. There are, in fact, only 3 realistic outcomes here. The first option is to keep the JCPOA in force, and ideally, engage Iran in constructive dialogue on the areas where we differ and the areas where our interests may align. As long as the signatories continue to abide by its provisions, and Iran is, despite Haley's insinuations, then Tehran will not have the bomb and the United States and its allies will be safer. The second option is letting the JCPOA collapses, thereby removing the constraints on Iran's nuclear program and leaving it is free to develop a bomb if it wishes. Bear in mind that if the United States kills the JCPOA and hawks keep talking about regime change, then Tehran's hardliners will be strengthened and Iran's incentive to have some sort of deterrent will increase, thereby making Iran's entry into the nuclear club more likely. So option 2 means a nuclear-armed Iran. But if you don't like that outcome, there's always option 3, preventive war. Yes, just what the United States and the countries of the Middle East really need right now, another war. It's not enough that we're still fighting the Islamic State, Syria is still riven with conflict, and Yemen is collapsing amid extremism, disease, and a Saudi aerial bombing campaign. It's a perfect time to start a war with Iran too, thereby inviting Iranian retaliation either directly or via its regional proxies such as Hezbollah. Of course, it won't surprise you that the people who keep trying to dismantle the JCPOA are mostly the same people who've repeatedly called for military action against Iran. Of course, it won't surprise you that the people who keep trying to dismantle the JCPOA are mostly the same people who've repeatedly called for military action against Iran. And guess what? They are for the most part the same strategic geniuses that told you toppling Saddam Hussein would be easy and cheap and would transform the Middle East into a sea of shiny pro-American democracies. It is frankly a bit astonishing that such people are still taken seriously, and let's not forget they've been consistently wrong about a lot more than that, but nobody ever said the US political system was good at holding people accountable these days. Yet there may be a silver lining in the Haley gambit and the rest of this deceitful campaign. As with Trump's DACA decision, that is, having his attorney general announce an end to the program and then giving Congress 6 months to find an alternative, Haley's speech stopped short of saying the United States should walk away from the deal. Indeed, she seemed to be mostly laying out a rationale for declaring Iran was not in compliance. This step is something President Donald Trump really wants to do, no matter what his senior foreign policy advisors tell him, which in effect means punting the whole issue over to Congress. Remember, the need to certify Iranian compliance is not part of the JCPOA itself. It was a requirement Congress imposed back when the deal was approved under President Barack Obama, declaring Iran to be non-compliant, irrespective of what the facts may be, simply kicks the issue down the Malta Capitol Hill. And that's where it gets interesting. At that point, would Congress actually take responsibility for torpedoing the deal? I'm not sure they would. For the past 20 years or more, senators and representatives have been able to score a lot of cheap political points by sponsoring anti-Iranian resolutions, sanctions, and other legislation, mostly intended to show how tough they are and to appease the constant pressure they get from the Israel lobby, and one suspects the Saudi lobby as well. That's much easier to do, however, when their actions have no real consequences. Directly ending the JCPOA would mean Congress would own a policy that could either lead to Iran actually getting the bomb or to a situation where the United States had to go to war to prevent it. Does anyone in Congress really want to take full responsibility for either of those outcomes, and in the full glare of public scrutiny? Ironically, congressional reticence could end up leaving the JCPOA intact. In the abstract, I'd probably prefer it if more people in Congress were knowledgeable, principled, realistic, and open-minded about foreign affairs, and more willing to stand up to the executive branch on big international issues. But in this case, and given the constellation of forces at play, I'd settle for self-interested and spineless. Photo credit, Nicholas Cam/AFP/Getty Images.
So that's a pretty large broadcast. Foreignpolicy.com. The case against the Iranian nuclear deal is one big lie. I clicked on virtual DJ, but that closed apparently. I hope that the broadcast continues. Okay, virtual DJ has restarted. I clicked on that other article. Okay. Oh, we already covered that, I guess. The German election is a Christian civil war. Readable on foreignpolicy.com. Egg. So one way to read these articles of HAARP and foreign policy is to just open them via the Google search engine, searching on the title, and then opening the cached page. Is there a... Well, I've demonstrated it in this video, so there's this little triangle next to the article. If you search it with this thing, like that. And then here we see this thing, and then if you open the cached page, you can read the article. Of course, it's a nuisance, so if you read it a lot, then you can subscribe or pay money to get access to the site. Irma leaves 9 dead in US, quote, devastation, quote, in Florida Keys. I hope they can in the future prevent these hurricanes with these ionospheric heaters and weather control weapons. But some people think they are doing this on purpose, of course, to create a crisis big enough to impose their totalitarian global government upon the people of the planet Earth. And that's covered in my previous broadcasts as well, that these unnatural earthquakes have a missing preamble on the seismographic chart. So that's how they're recognized. According to some sources online. But they might use newer weapons that resemble natural quake more. So then it's hard to tell, or impossible to tell, unless you have a scalar detector or whatever type of wave they're using, detector ELF waves or whatever. Gorka, Trump administration must end Iran nuclear deal. So based on the New York Times article, it's a matter of giving them a list of suspect nuclear sites. According to the IAEA, the United States has not delivered a list of suspect locations, which they first have to have. To do the inspections. And of course, a nuclear world war would be far more expensive, also far more expensive than deciding to dismantle these nuclear weapons now to end the insanity once and for all. So this is just mainstream media fluff, and well, we can read why that person thinks it, but I think they don't have to end the nuclear deal if they can just give a list and then they do the inspections of the facility that didn't allow the inspections, which would supposedly be the reason to break up the nuclear agreement. So I think they first have to supply that list of suspect sites and then they can do the inspections. And there's no problem whatsoever. So why don't they do that then?
Gorka, Trump administration must end Iran nuclear deal. Former White House strategist Sebastian Gorka, app. By Theodore Bunker, Monday, September 11, 2017, 9:56 a.m. President Donald Trump's administration must terminate the nuclear deal with Iran, according to former White House strategist Sebastian Gorka. The U.S. has seen more jihadist attacks and plots on U.S. soil in the last 2 years than any previous comparable period, Gorka will say in Israel at the International Institute for Counterterrorism on Monday, according to an advanced copy of his speech obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. In arrests as far apart as California and New York, we see an enemy that has moved from attempting to send foreign terrorists here to America, moved to recruiting and indoctrinating U.S. nationals or residents who are already in the country, such as the Boston bombers and the San Bernardino killers. According to Gorka, agreements like the Iran nuclear deal haven't stopped the threat of terrorism. If we use a less parochial filter, and look at what the global jihadi movement has wrought globally since September 11, 2001, we cannot claim any kind of victory, Gorka will say. Iran remains the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world today, Gorka says. With the rise of ISIS, the collapse in Syria, and the continued conflict in Yemen, the mullahs and the forces under their command have expanded their destabilizing actions in support of their Shia version of radical Islam. The American government's strategy to defeat Sunni jihadism must not play into the hands of Shia jihadism, Gorka will claim. All the more so after the billions of dollars released by the last White House back into the coffers of Tehran. A nuclear caliphate informed by an apocalyptic vision of Islamic salvation will not succumb to the logic of nuclear deterrence and the prior stability of mutually assured destruction, he laid. Action must be taken now to obviate the establishment a nuclear-capable Shia caliphate. Recertification of the Potemkin Accord, that is the JCPOA, Iran deal, will not stop Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. Related stories. Germany's Merkel points to Iran talks as model for Korea. The Art of Strengthening the Iran Deal, copyright 2017 Newsmax, all rights reserved. Home, Europe tags, EU, Germany, North Korea. Germany's Merkel points to Iran talks as model for Korea. Newsmax.com. Berlin, app. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is pointing to the negotiations that led to Iran curtailing its nuclear program as a possible model for tackling the crisis over North Korea's nuclear and missile tests. Merkel stressed in an interview with the Frankfurter Allgemeine Sonntagszeitung newspaper published Sunday that a diplomatic solution is the only viable way to resolve the crisis. She added, "If our participation in talks is wanted, I will say yes immediately." The 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and Germany conducted long-running talks with Iran that led to a 2015 deal for international sanctions to be lifted in exchange for Tehran curbing its nuclear activities. Merkel said, "I could also imagine such a format to settle the North Korea conflict." Copyright 2017 The Associated Press, all rights reserved. This material may not be published, broadcast, rewritten or redistributed. Click here to comment on this article.
Well, it's a bit late. Perhaps it's better if they put it on top of the article. And of course people can read it online, so perhaps they can cut it out like the music, basically. And perhaps they've made this to sabotage this whole broadcast with these articles, basically. They don't want others. They want total control to depopulate you all. Enslave you all. I was going to show you that picture again of Adolf Hitler making the same hand signal that Merkel is making, and some think that she is the daughter of Adolf Hitler. And the eyes are interesting, so it's I don't have any opinion before there's any evidence that proves it beyond any reasonable doubt. Backups, documents. Yeah. Illuminati symbols, info. This is a pretty interesting picture show. So this is Adolf making that hand signal. JC. Margaret Chan and George Soros are committee of 300 subversive body of the Club of Rome members. Michelle Obama is a male. Michael Levon Robinson. Prior to the sex exchange operation, that was the name of the person now known as Michelle Obama. The number NASA, these are official NASA pictures, is in the right corner and left bottom corner. You can read that by pausing this video. Nope. Instead of hope, basically. And these are the engines versus the nozzles. The nozzles are used to disperse the cancer chemtrails, Project Cloverleaf. So before 1998 there were no cancer chemtrails in our sky. You can see that on pictures and videos, proving beyond any reasonable doubt that they're not contrails, which is their lie to depopulate Earth. Another version of the same picture. President Putin making the El Diablo hand signal. Tom Cruise and Kanye West or whatever, I don't know. And some other person making the same hand signal. So Hitler was person of the year. Like Obama in 2012, Hitler in 1938, Time, person of the year. Well, I think Guantanamo looks quite alright. It's a matter of treating the people right and just stop fucking around and create a better timeline for everyone. Channel that money to controlling the factors that control aging instead of another stupid bloody world war that perhaps none of us would survive. So there are 15 scalar weapon countries. I've covered this in previous broadcasts also. That's Professor Eric Pianka quote. One of the 6 Jews that want to depopulate Earth, and of course Ted Turner, a non-Jew of CNN, also has made that clear. So these book quotes prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. Yet they have illegally refused me my right to press charges of incitement to commit genocide, and also the murder of my mother with directed energy weapons, and the cancer cell from radiation damages. So this describes the false flags, Citizens Action Network on Facebook, descendants of Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula, relations, and then we've made a full circle. Alright, so this is it for now, I guess. All the recent articles on Iran. And it's simply better to be prepared with a radiological water filter and storable food. Of course, I'm not selling anything. I'm not even getting any monetization, because real love is free. So I do these broadcasts for free, and donations are welcome to help me perhaps get a better computer and stuff so that I can do better broadcasts. Donations via universalpeace.jimdo.com. I've made this new sample.
Visit my YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/ulrichbchoffman. Visit universalpeace.jimdo.com 999 per logic 999.blog2blog.nl universecreator.weebly.com doctorna.wordpress.com for universal peace.
Universal peace now. I, Donald Trump, am going to stop spending money on the stupid fucking military and start spending for universal peace.
So here you also see Adolf Hitler making the hand signal in Merkel. I can check who claimed that. MacedoniaOnline.eu. Debunked, so they use debunked instead of evidence and proof to avoid a trial, because what they're doing is illegal. I've made clear that the Freemasons of NASA are also running the Apollo moon landing hoax, the fake Apollo moon landings, and I've made a top 10 of reasons, things that prove that the Apollo moon landings are fake. And many people leave the most important evidence out of their top 10. So in reality, in space there is no air, there's a vacuum, there cannot be sound in space. And in the NASA videos you can clearly hear sounds when the astronauts are moving a plate and it falls, and it makes a loud noise via the microphone in the astronaut's helmet. And that proves beyond any reasonable doubt that they shot that in a studio. I've shown that video in my previous broadcast, so then you can easily find it by clicking on my name down here. You visit my channel and everything's on there, so please like and subscribe. So here we see these sources that claim or talk about Angela Merkel being Hitler's daughter. Angela Merkel is the daughter of Hitler and Hitler was a Rothschild. ConspiracyDailyUpdate.com. So it's interesting that some people already are denying it without having any evidence that proves it one way or another. They just form an opinion based on nothing. And those are the people not to listen to, of course. You have to have evidence, test everything you learn. To get somewhere, knowledge is power. So it's not always easy to get. Okay. Well then. And Hitler, of course, also wanted that New World Order, global government, the Jesuit Holocaust. It's clear the Neuordnung, I've covered that in my previous broadcast, and the fact that the final solution in the sense of exterminating large numbers of people is originally a Jewish idea to exterminate the German people of Theodor Kaufman. The people that claim that the Anne Frank diary is fake and that Kristallnacht was a Bolshevik organized part of a plot to make the German people look bad. So that's all covered in my previous broadcast. Also, people that claim that Holocaust is fake, that deny the Holocaust, that claim that they were worker camps with a swimming pool, for example Auschwitz had a swimming pool, and that lots of German people also died of starvation, so that happened, and they were also transported to the camps, but they disagree also on the number of Jewish people that have died and on whether they were worker camps or concentration camps. And I've been trying to find evidence that proves that the 6 million Jews were gassed in the concentration camps, but I ran into all this stuff basically. I thought, if it happened, then there must be evidence online, it must be easy to prove, and if you have any evidence, then please Skype Prologic999. Okay, so that's it for this broadcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. Also, ideas for universal peace are welcome. People that want to join my anti-global government movement, that have ideas, we could do a movie, for example, and stuff like that. Of course, the anti-global government movement is huge. If these people would know they want to get rid of 93% of the world's global population, that they are on that list to be exterminated, they would be anti-global government move. And of course, that's why I've made the movement, to give these people a voice. There are mosquitoes in my room. And it's possible they remotely control them, of course, with through-the-wall radar, the FIPA array in Poker Flat, Alaska. And HAARP is open every 6 years to the public. That may be a fake facility to cover up these camouflaged arrays. I think that HAARP is reopened, that they wrote that, so that may be true, I don't know. And that's a fake facility, so they don't do directed energy weapon torture with HAARP, but with another ionospheric heater. And they also have mobile ionospheric heaters, and it's possible they also have satellites that can do this. So that's Nikola Tesla's wireless energy, also covered in previous broadcasts. The scalar waves, 12 things you should know about scalar weapons by Christy Verismo. That's a separate broadcast, and so is the Luciferian oath, extreme Jesuit oath, and Illuminati blood oath murders, all 3 of them in one broadcast. So I think this is concentrated intel, the stuff you really need to know about the people that want to depopulate to 500 million and impose their totalitarian global government upon you all, the Jesuits and Freemasons. So I'm not blaming all the Jews or all the Muslims, etc. I'm not a racist, I'm not homophobic, and I am anti-racism and anti-homophobia. and I'm a heterosexual male. I studied at the University of Amsterdam. And single women are welcome for free shields of hand massage, but if YouTube is selectively blocking my broadcast, then that explains why so few people get to see my broadcasts. So I hereby temporarily halt this broadcast for universal peace. Tune in next time.